right? And that's where we come to practice makes permanent, right? You might have heard this term, practice makes perfect. Well, that's not accurate. Practice makes permanent. And this is the second key area, and that's repetition. Through practice and repetition, we're able to reprogram our minds and bodies in any number of ways. There are many schools of thought surrounding this method, of which many people have reported positive results. You might have heard about this 30 days to make a habit kind of thing, or 21 days, some people say, where you do something every day, every single day for 30 days, and then it just becomes a habit. That's an unconscious reprogramming that you're performing, right? You're overwriting that. Now, it takes a lot more work to overwrite deeper unconscious tendencies or beliefs of oneself that are handed to you from your parents, but it's certainly possible to change it. It's so widely understood, and when I say it's possible to change it, it depends on the level of the unconscious programming. Some folks have I can't speak to folks that have endured massive amounts of trauma as children, because that can cause very serious problems, and it's very hard to counteract. And I'm not a psychotherapist or anything, so I don't really know I can't speak too much about that part. But I'm saying in general, the general beliefs of our parents, barring any kind of like major trauma, that's essentially what I'm talking about with unconscious programming. It's probably the most common. I'm talking about the most common types of unconscious programming that most of us are inheriting from our parents, just to make that clear. So it's widely understood that practice or repetition will help rewire your unconscious instincts. And it's so well known that really it's hardly worth mentioning. The nice thing about practice is you can practice all sorts of helpful things to improve your life at any time in the day. You can practice just thinking about something you want to reprogram in yourself, a belief that you want to reprogram, right? Even during the most seemingly mundane and ordinary moments of your life, you can be obsessed with this, and this obsession will help reprogram. You can quite literally train yourself to rewire your unconscious many times during the day whenever you have a free moment. You should take advantage of this. Instead of reaching for your phone and letting your unconscious beliefs drag you this way and that, you can invoke an entirely new practice of your choosing. Now, there's commonly an aversion that happens to repetition or practice in certain areas. And a lot of people seem to have this aversion to repetition or aversion to practice. Now, most enjoy repetition of the feel-good reward center activities, right? Everyone likes that. But if something is not associated with the reward centers of the brain, it can often be disregarded. This aversion to repetition should be investigated in earnest. You should really explore this, because when it comes to things which serve to assist in rewiring your belief systems which rule your life, they may not seem the most exciting at first, the most exciting things to repeat, but oftentimes the benefits of even the most simple habits and the most mundane thought patterns can open the door to rewiring our unconscious beliefs and habits and changing our lives drastically for the better. I often find myself listening to the same talk from great teachers, or I'll read the same passages over and over in order to reinforce my understanding of the teaching, but also to rewire my unconscious so that I may automatically call upon such beliefs. I will automatically call upon such wisdom when it's needed the most, right? This is different than trying to remember a fact and then spit it out. That's like secondhand information. The firsthand knowing or the firsthand understanding of information is embedding it into your unconscious programming so that it really becomes a part of who you are in a sense, right? That's the real trick. People that can dip into their memory bank and recite a fact, or something they believe to be a fact, right? That's not really that impressive because they're not aware that if you've unconsciously programmed yourself to know things, and I'm not saying you're loading your unconscious up with facts. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you have an unconscious belief in yourself that you can do this or that, when the time comes to deliver, when you're put to the test, you pass the test always with flying colors because of your belief, not because of what facts you know, right? That makes all the difference between someone who can respond to a situation and you sit back and you look at this and you go, wow, that was amazing, right? Versus someone who comes up with a little quip or a little fact, a little factoid. There's lots of people that like to spit out factoids, but they don't really understand, right? It's not really coming from them. They're just kind of, where can I go in this little 5% conscious Rolodex to get something out and put it in here? But if you know it, it has a different weight when you have it in, have that in your belief system, right? And your responses to things come from your beliefs, has a lot more weight in it, has a lot more impact, and people can sense the difference, right? So you can make the great wisdom teachings part of your biology. If you can get beyond this distaste for hearing the same thing told over and over. This doesn't mean you should listen to something that does not speak to you, right? Or try to Jedi mind trick yourself into liking something that you really don't. Be honest with yourself, but also challenge yourself. Keep looking until you find what works for you, okay? Repetition also promotes a longer attention span, better focus, and improves your ability to look at the same thing in progressively deeper and different ways. While I certainly am saying the same things in many different ways during this series, the point of repetition isn't just so I can hear the sound of my amazing voice, but rather to rewire my own unconscious, thereby reinforcing the programming that I want to have running in the background all the time, naturally, authentically, instinctually, right? This is as much for me, this presentation is as much for me as it is for you, after all, right? So let's talk about some positive changes in unconscious programming. And before I do that, I just want to say that when you're in school, there are a lot of subjects thrown at you. And the failing of most school systems is that, especially the public education system, is that there is an emphasis on memorization and reciting what you've memorized. And then you move on to the next thing. And then you do that. You memorize and repeat. Move on to the next thing. That isn't anything that's going to be imprinted on you in a meaningful way. It's not going to be really part of you, right, in the long term, right? It's almost like there's two worlds of education. There's the world of almost like what this series is doing, what I'm doing with trying to educate and trying to get you to wire your own unconscious and to think about things differently. And then there's this job training that's happening in the school system, right? That world that's trying to get you just to have the skills to be an obedient office worker, right? And think along those lines too. This presentation is pretty much the opposite of whatever the public school system is, right? This presentation, if anything, is I guess you would say is the antithesis of the public education system. So, and also another thing with public education is it develops such a distaste in people that later on, after they get out of school, you get out of high school, you get out of college, most people have such a distaste for learning because they associate learning with the style of education in high school or in college. And it's such a, most classes are just garbage. They're just not worth your time, that you associate learning with college or learning with high school, and you don't want to learn anymore, right? But everyone should be a lifelong learner. That's how you really enhance your life. That's how you really change the world for the better, right? So let's talk about positive changes in unconscious programming. Here's some suggestions. You may want to take a screenshot of this or write this down. The first step here towards changing or rewiring your unconscious programming or rewriting your unconscious programming is you need to find what your primary learning style is, or what your main learning styles are. Okay? And once you do some research on finding your primary learning styles, do activities which appeal to those primary learning styles first, or involve yourself in activities which utilize those learning styles. And so I'm giving some examples of some activities and also the learning style that they're associated with to give you those connections. Okay. So the first is to create a vision board that you will see and can reflect on every day. A vision board, get like a, you get like a cork board, or you get some construction board or something, or even just cardboard, whatever. And you take pictures of things that you want for your life, and you put them up, and you take words and quotes and whatever you want to do. You want to envision what your life is going to look like. What kind of life do you want? What's important to you? What are your values? Those kinds of things. Put them on your vision board. What goals do you want, right? How do you want to get there? All of those things. You can also investigate SMART goals. SMART goals is a great way to set, because a lot of people will set goals, but then how do you achieve the goal? What are the steps involved to get to the goal? Well, SMART goals, if you Google that, is a great way to do that. So a vision board, of course, is going to work for visual learners. So if you find out that your learning style is more visual, and don't guess at this, you definitely want to make sure you confirm. There's many tests online freely available. You can discover what your primary learning style is, or maybe you have a combination of two dominant learning styles, but make sure you find out. So the next one is listening, auditory learning. You want to listen to books, listen to audiobooks, listen to stories, listen to positive affirmations, listen to lectures, whatever you like. And you can do this while you're awake or sleeping, right? If you're listening to positive affirmations while you're asleep, then you're going to be using auto-hypnosis. There's all kinds of auto-hypnosis stuff out there. I can't say which ones work and which don't. I've used a little bit of it, but I'm not really sure myself. So that's auditory learning. The third would be surround yourself with positive reinforcement. Positive people. Go to places. If you feel like you don't have any positive friends or positive family members, seek out places in the community, right? Places you can go where there are groups. There's meetup groups for positive people. And, maybe not just necessarily positive, but maybe you're interested in a certain activity, right? And you want to learn more, and you want to, then within those groups, you want to gravitate towards the people that are positive, people that are reinforcing, right? Or even support groups, right? Men's groups, women's groups, co-ed groups, whatever. But surround yourself with this positive reinforcement. And this also factors in with the quality of your attention, right? Make sure the quality of your attention is higher and you're surrounded by people that are helping you. They're helping you rewire your unconscious programming just by being around you, just by being positive, right? So group learning, some people learn well in groups, group discussions, activities, that kind of thing, right? The fourth one is writing a journal. So if you're a verbal learner, right, you want to write in a journal, you want to just free write, right? There's a great site. I think a lot of my viewers are fans of Jordan Peterson. Maybe some aren't, but I know a fair number of my viewers like Jordan Peterson, and I'm a huge fan of Jordan Peterson. And I actually have I signed up, a couple of years ago for his course on, it's called self-authoring. I believe it's selfauthoring.com. And there is great, if you're a verbal learner and you want to start to reprogram your unconscious, then that site, the self-authoring site, is a fantastic way to do it. Involves a lot of writing and contemplation and reflection, right? The fifth one is walking, meditating, and listening. It's a physical learning. Some people really do well with physical learning. You get your body moving, everything's activated, the blood's pumping, the brain's working, and this movement assists in your learning. You can walk and talk with someone, or you can go for a walk and listen to a podcast, or you can do a walking meditation called Kinhin meditation. You could do that, right? So find out, maybe that works for you, maybe physical learning. And then finally, solitary learning. Find out your learning methods on your own. Find out what works for you by yourself. Some people learn very well uninterrupted. I happen to be a solitary learner myself. I spend a lot of time alone, but I've used all of these learning styles through various methods, going to groups, definitely lots of visual learning. I've been involved in all of these activities, all these different learning styles, and sometimes the best way to really find out which learning style is going to work for you is to try them all. See which ones appeal to you and see which ones you respond to. So now let's talk about the dark side of unconscious programming. This is the darker side of unconscious programming, the negative changes, or the nocebo effect, as this part's called. So Netflix has become America's favorite pastime. And as binge watching has quickly become the norm, in the past few decades, Hollywood has really been forced to compete with much more agile competitors like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video for its audience share, right? The cinemas are really hurting. Year after year, it seems like less and less people are actually going to the movies, right? They're having a very difficult time competing with the TV series model of entertainment, which often, the TV model often releases an entire season all at once, right? You've got hours upon hours of entertainment available right in your own home, right? It's more entertainment for far less money when you compare to how much it costs to go see a film, right? So what's not to like about that? And also, I don't know about you, but it seems like a lot of times I've been to the movies, there's someone talking, or I just get distracted. There's someone just sitting behind me chomping away on, this or that, or making some noises, checking their phone, little lights going. I look over, there's someone just checking their phone. There's a lot of reasons not really to go to the movies anymore, right? So whether unintentional or by design, or possibly an evolutionary mix of both, online entertainment services have devised several key strategies to grow their audience and to keep them watching. What isn't often discussed, but is most important, it's a very important point to make about binge watching your favorite TV series, is that it utilizes both of the primary unconscious programming techniques of theta wave state and repetition, or practice makes permanent, right? These two unconscious programming modes, the theta wave state and repetition, or methods we could call them, make for a very dangerous cocktail of unconscious imprinting upon an unsuspecting audience. Consciously, the influences may go undetected, especially if one is desensitized to graphic violence, for example. But the unconscious effects are certainly damaging. So you really do have to be aware. And I like being entertained just like anyone else. I'm not here to say that Netflix Netflix is a CIA operation and it's here to take over your mind and da 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 da. I'm not saying that. It could be used for that, but I'm not saying that's what it's for, right? However, you have to be mindful that if entertainment uses both the theta wave state and this repetition, which I'll demonstrate how this works, you have to be mindful of that, and then you have to start to at least use your intuition and your ability for critical thinking at the same time, and I'll talk about each of these, and start looking at some of these messages, right? Well, what are these shows really saying? Here's something I found online. Someone who worked at Netflix, and he's talking about the process of, I guess, remaining successful, or how Netflix works, right? And this guy says, binge watching, it turns new seasons of shows into absolute must-watch events because everyone is watching it and talking about the new season, which means if you don't binge watch, you're behind of the water cooler style conversation. More importantly, though, he says, if the episodes are released in a timed format, for example, once a week, there's a much greater chance of people dropping out. Everything released all at once ensures that more people will watch through the end of the show, thus making the show that much more valuable to Netflix as it spreads word of mouth and so on. So it's this repetition. Remember, if you repeat something over and over and over, it becomes a habit, right? They know this at Netflix. They know this in the online entertainment outlets that are available. First, let's look at how theta wave state works with respect to TV shows and movies. Theta is the state of mind akin to unconscious suggestion. From birth to age 7, like I covered before, when we are quite literally just little learning machines in the theta wave state, television programming helps trigger this state as adults while we enjoy our favorite show. So this theta wave state is definitely activated when you're watching a show that you like. Your highest state of susceptibility is when you can suspend disbelief, right? You let your mind go and accept the story which is being told to you. In other words, you allow yourself to be entertained. When you're allowing this entertainment, right, what's happening is that when you engage, what's not happening is that you're not engaging your critical thinking. You're just allowing this, you're letting your mind go. You're letting go of skepticism. You're letting go of all these things in order to just be entertained for a time, right? So think about what happens when you engage your critical thinking capacity during a movie or TV show. If you really start thinking critically, what happens? The premise and the supporting actions of the film must be accepted and not criticized, or else it completely ruins the effect of the movie and you don't enjoy it at all. So you can't bring critical thinking to your favorite show or your favorite movie, right? Because if you do, it'll all fall apart. This often accounts for the difference between a good movie review and a bad one. At least in my thinking, if someone has, and remember, if you like something, it's mostly unconscious anyway, right? So if you like a movie, there's unconscious triggers happening that you can identify with. It creates a safe place, or it creates familiar territory that you just like. Or maybe you like that actor, right? There's actors that we like and we don't like, and really the deciding factor for most of that is the unconscious mechanisms, the unconscious programming, right? It's like that saying, I like what I like and I can't explain it, or, the heart wants what the heart wants. Well, it's really the unconscious is running the show here, right? And after all, you don't really watch shows you don't like for very long, at least, do you? You're not going to watch an entire season of a show you don't like or it doesn't appeal to you. Of course not. You stick with shows you like, and you are far more likely to trust and believe the messages of the show that you like than the messages coming from the shows that you don't like, which you weren't watching anyway. While there is nothing wrong with being entertained, try asking yourself exactly why it is that you like this show or that movie in the first place, right? Try to dive deep into that, and what about it do I like? And not on the superficial conscious level, but think about it on the deeper psychological level, the unconscious level. It's also worth taking a step back and thinking about the overall themes or unspoken messages that TV shows and movies are attempting to deliver to the audience. Now, thankfully, a heightened theta wave state in the brain not only increases your suggestibility, but it also enhances your intuition. This intuition can be trained to decipher the hidden elements and messages that are being communicated to you. Every disadvantage, after all, also has its distinct advantages. The intuition is your best tool for converting the unseen into the seen. You know that feeling you get about a character in your favorite show? The feeling that you don't trust this character, or you really like another character? You can use that very same intuitive power to decipher the consciously hidden themes being transmitted by way of unconscious symbolism. Just make sure you are aware that good writers will try to misguide and misdirect your instincts in order for maximum payoff to appear in the form of a surprise somewhere in the story.